Well, welcome to Noel's World of Whiskey. What have we got today? We have a Japanese whiskey, which, by the way, I have not reviewed. I have not reviewed any Japanese whiskey. Now, I've had a couple in the cupboard. I've had a couple brought over to me. I drank a few at other folks' place, but for some reason I have never reviewed, and this has been around for a while. So, this is Taketsuru. And Taketsuru is named after the founder of Nikka. This is Nikka whiskey. His name was Matsutaka, and I'm going to use the name Masa, that the love of his life, Rita, that's what she would call him, Masa. Just makes it a little easier. You know, there's quite a story behind the founder, the love of his life, both loves of his life, and the whiskey, the whiskey story itself. Now, Taketsuru is not a pure single malt. And I think when I first bought this, I wasn't aware of it. But what this is, we'll call it a blended malt. And this used to be an age statement. Right up till, I think it was 1914, 1916, somewhere around there. But anyways, what I'm going to say about it is it has a lot of, there's a colorful history to it. Taketsuru, we'll call him Masa, was born in 1894. And he was born to sake distillery family, sake merchants, and they had they actually were they'd been at it for a long time, for a few hundred years, and his family expected him to continue on in that trade. But you know, he had education in chemistry, and he wanted to go to Scotland, and he wanted to study whiskey. So he did get financing from a company to go and study whiskey, because they were planning on producing whiskey and they wanted him to learn as much as he could. So he ended up enrolling at the University of Glasgow, and in 1918, and he actually did an apprenticeship. First he went to Longmorn. He spent some time at Longmorn, and then he went to Bowness, James Calder Bowness Distillery, and he studied the coffee stills. And then he finished off his apprenticeship with Hazelburn, which of course is in Campbelltown, one of the ghost distilleries today. We will pour, let it sit for a bit, but I will show you the color of it. Now, the thing about this whiskey is there's no information on the bottle. So it's not overly transparent. So when I look at the bottle, there's no case with it. All it says is produced by the Nikka Whiskey Distilling Company. And then, of course, on the back it tells you a story about Matsutaka. And it's, other than the 43% and the size of the bottle, there's nothing. So I will bring up the bottle, let you take a peek at the bottle. There's the bottle. And here is the whiskey. First, this is a story about two people from two very different cultures on opposite sides of the world that fell in love. And then there is the story about the father and mother of Japanese whiskey. Masataka Taketsuru was from a successful sake brewing family, and Masa was expected to continue that trade. He studied chemistry, but he wanted to go to Scotland to learn the whiskey business. By 1918, he was enrolled in Glasgow University, then did an apprenticeship at Longmorn Distillery, and later at Hazelburn. Masa met his future wife Rita at a dinner invitation after teaching her brother judo. They soon fell in love and were married in Glasgow in 1920.
Rita Masa returned to Japan that year, and eventually Masa was employed by Shinjiro Torii, the founder of Suntory. He was with Shinjiro for a decade. Then he decided to start his own distillery in Yoichi, a small provincial town in Hokkaido, which had a climate close to that of Scotland. The distillery wasn't finished until 1934, and distilling began in 1936, but wasn't ready to sell until 1940. Masa started an apple juice business, while Rita gave English and piano lessons to make ends meet. Rita stayed during World War II to support Masa. While the business thrived, it wasn't easy for Rita. After the war, the American occupation only increased their whiskey sales. Dai Nippon Kaju, aka the Great Japanese Juice Company, was shortened to Nikka in 1952. Rita passed away at the age of 64 in 1961. Masa was shattered by her death, but he kept building Nikka as his wife would have wanted him to. The original coal-fired Yoichi stills are a copy of the Longmorn stills from his early years studying the whiskey industry in Scotland. In 1969, Masa opened his new Miyagikyo distillery near Sendai. The 1963 coffee stills from the now closing Nishinomiya plant were added there in 1999. Masa did not get to see that or the other changes that were to happen because he passed away in 1979 at 85. Rita and Masa's love for one another and their love of life will live on not just with their families, but with the Japanese and Scottish people that remember their story.
So I forgot to mention to you that this is a vatted malt of both of their distilleries. So these two distillery presentations are vatted together in the Taketsuru. And of course, Yoichi, which is about an hour's drive west of Sapporo up on Hokkaido Island on the coast, the northwest coast, on the Yoichi River, it's known to be a little bit pear, a little more spicy, a little stronger presentation. Still has coal-fired stills. And of course the Miyagikyo distillery, and that's a mouthful. I have to learn to pronounce that. So the Miyagikyo distillery, it's the newer one, built in 1969. And that is located north of Tokyo, next to the city of Sendai. And it's noted for a fruitier, kind of a bright finish, and certainly has a nice contrast to the Yoichi presentation. So you bought the two of those together, and that is what we have here in the Taketsuru pure malt whiskey. Anyways, 43%, and as I said to you, there's not a lot of information on it. So let's get into the nose. Well, I'm getting some pears, apples, some raisins, and some dark fruit, honey, some cinnamon, and some ginger notes. It is leathery, and yeah, there's some spices happening. There are malt notes, like granola, bread doughy. Okay, to the palate. Much spicier on the palate. I'm still getting the honey and the dark fruit. Tasting the pears and the apples and the peaches, and I'm tasting a little bit of smoke. I didn't mention smoke on the nose, but I've noticed it before, but it's not strong. It's very much in the background. And definitely have the cinnamon with the spices, some peppery notes, nutmeg, ginger, some of our baking spices. Wee bit of vanilla, more honey, more of the honey notes. But there is a lightness to this whiskey. It's not a real heavy whiskey. I find it fairly light. But there's nothing dirty about it, that's for sure. So I'm going to say the Yoichi distillery influence seems to be stronger here than the Miyagikyo distillery, which is noted more for its lighter floral and fruity notes, more of a fresh, bright presence to it, presentation to it. Yoichi's noted more for its spicier, stronger, kind of like a Highland whiskey, slightly peated. And I think that's more what we see here. By the way, Masataka copied the design of the stills at Longmorn. When he was doing his apprenticeship at Longmorn Distillery, he wrote down all the details of the design of those stills. And when he built Yoichi Distillery, that is based on that design. He did notes how he remembered all this stuff. But there's pictures of from his scrapbook of the detail analysis of what he learned, and also pictures of all the different equipment, etc. So he was a very intense learner. But anyways, let's get into the finish. Much more fruity now. And the honey, floral, bit of red licorice going on here. Caramel notes. But the finish is, it's like I say, it's not a heavy drink. It's going to be on the short side of medium. It's not a heavy coating. It's not like the Glendronach I did a short while ago. It's not a bad whiskey. I never took to the Japanese whiskeys as much as some other people do. And, I'm going to give it a little bit of water. Let's see what water does here. Now, the whiskey's 43%, so I didn't put a lot of water in it. And we will start with the nose. Very floral. We're getting the Bouchard Gardens in the spring there. We're actually getting some mountain heather. It's lavender. And even some clover. Yeah, there's a little bit of alfalfa notes there. Grassy notes. And bread dough. Yeah, it's the malt. Bringing out a bit of the malt. Granola. Anyways, with water, the palate. Licorice. So I didn't get my much smoke on the nose. The licorice is telling me there's a little bit of smoke happening. And that's the dark licorice. But it's sweet dark licorice. So a bit of caramel. Light coating on my mouth. I have the cinnamon, the spices are coming through now, and a bit of the nutmeg. I'm going to say some of the allspice, maybe more so baking spices. Not, you know, I mentioned to you about the finish and all that. It's not super long. It's more on the short side. Light coating on the mouth. Overall, this is a pleasant drink. It's not over the top. Interesting thing about Masa was that he actually, when he came back to Japan from Scotland with Rita, the people that sent him over there decided to not go ahead with the whiskey project. So he was a little bit devastated by that. But Shinjiro Tori, who was the founder of Suntory, was looking to start up a whiskey distillery, and he knew of Masa's knowledge, and he went looking for him. He wanted him to start up that distillery. He wanted somebody with his knowledge. So the two of them didn't 100% agree on location. You know, Tori was a businessman, so he's thinking practical shipping costs, etc. And so he wanted it more, you know, centralized, like in a place, you know, Tokyo, Osaka, or someplace like that, close to the market. Whereas Masa was looking more at a location similar to Scotland. So he's looking more up toward Hokkaido Island, which, you know, in terms of, you know, shipping and that would have been a little bit more of a challenge. But they ended up, 10 years they worked together. He worked for Tori, and he actually started up the Yamazaki distillery, the famous Yamazaki distillery. So that was Taketsuru that started that up. He led the project. So as much as they're in competition today, they work together. Anyways, I am going to give this 81, 82, somewhere in that area, 81-ish, 82. Like I say, it's not over the top. It's a pleasant whiskey. Some of you are going to like this whiskey, by the way. It goes down easy. But would I go out and buy another bottle? Probably not. But I'm not going to condemn it. You know, there's nothing off-putting about it. It's a decent dram. Anything in the 80s is going to be a decent dram. So, anyways, let's leave it at that. So, I'm going to ask you to drink wisely, drink intelligently. Do not drink and drive. And until the next time, Slàinte.